alien fleet hovered in the sky like an endless blanket of death, casting shadows over Earth's cities. Their ships were sleek, immense, and terrifyingly quiet, a show of superiority that required no fanfare. Below, human defenses had already been stretched thin, ground forces obliterated, air support rendered useless by advanced alien tech. The invaders' superiority was undeniable, and Earth's resistance was crumbling under the weight of the attack. Within the alien command center, the generals barely spared Earth's remaining defenses a glance. They hovered around holographic maps, their elongated limbs gesturing with lazy assurance. A blue-skinned general, her multiple eyes fixed on the display, smirked. "These humans," she hissed in their guttural tongue, "think their primitive tactics will be enough to challenge us? Laughable." Her fellow generals chuckled, a low, droning sound of amusement. "Focus on the larger fleet movements. Crush their cities. The outliers are no concern," another added. They had reviewed Earth's forces, considered the dwindling defenses, and concluded that it was only a matter of time. But not everyone on Earth had surrendered to despair. In a distant military base nestled deep in the mountains, an elite squad of snipers readied themselves for what would likely be their final mission. They were quiet, precise, and unflinching. Each of them had trained for years, honing their skills in terrains and environments where even the slightest miscalculation could mean death. Their eyes scanned through scopes, fingers hovering just above triggers, nerves tempered by years of experience. Corporal Davis, the team leader, observed his unit with grim determination. His face was weathered, jaw clenched in a permanent state of readiness. Around him, his team prepared their weapons. A low murmur filled the air, but no one spoke unless necessary. In this room, efficiency was the rule. "Satellite intel shows the enemy's main command base in Sector Alpha," Davis said, his voice measured calm. "Their generals are operating out of that ship. Our job is simple: get eyes on them, gather intel, and relay it to command. If we get the shot, we take it." The other snipers nodded, each one a veteran of countless missions. There was Jackson, the team's scout, known for his uncanny ability to disappear into any landscape. Beside him was Ramirez, the quiet one, who never missed a shot. Together, they formed a tight-knit group that trusted their lives to one another without hesitation. Davis looked at each of them in turn. "This mission is about precision. We are not here to engage unless absolutely necessary. We find our targets, we take them down, and we leave. If we do this right, no one will know we were there." Meanwhile, back in the alien command center, the generals continued their discussions, oblivious to the storm brewing below. The idea of human snipers penetrating their defenses was laughable to them. The generals were more concerned with larger, organized resistance efforts. They ignored the possibility that a small group could be anything more than a nuisance. It was a fatal mistake. The snipers moved with purpose, hiking through dense forests, moving under the cover of night. Their gear blended seamlessly with the environment, camouflaged suits that matched the terrain, silent footsteps that barely rustled leaves. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. The air was thick with tension, but they didn't falter. Davis halted the group with a silent gesture, scanning the horizon through his scope. The alien command post was just ahead, a massive structure guarded by troops and shielded by advanced technology. From this distance, it looked impenetrable, but Davis knew better. There were always gaps in the defenses, and finding them was what his team excelled at. They set up their positions on a ridge, where they had a clear line of sight to the alien generals. With swift efficiency, tripods were set, rifles positioned. The scopes adjusted, picking up even the smallest details from the miles that separated them from their targets. Each sniper settled into their role, breathing in rhythm with the wind, their hands steady as they focused on the task at hand. Below, the alien generals remained oblivious, continuing to dismiss Earth's defenses as mere distractions. It was their arrogance that had led them to this point. They couldn't fathom that a few humans, armed with primitive weapons, could pose a threat. The snipers remained motionless, every movement calculated, waiting for the perfect moment. This was their domain, the silence before the storm, the breath before the trigger was pulled. Now, They would show the invaders just how wrong they were. A deep breath. Steady. Silence settled over the ridge as the snipers focused on their targets, eyes trained through scopes. Corporal Davis exhaled slowly, his crosshairs aligning perfectly with the head of an alien officer directing ground operations from a nearby outpost. The wind was calm, the distance carefully measured. He squeezed the trigger. The alien's head snapped back, its body collapsing in a heap. No sound. No alarm. Davis immediately moved his sights to the next target. Ramirez took his shot next, a clean hit to another officer's chest, piercing armor as if it were paper. Jackson followed suit, eliminating a communications specialist, cutting off any potential warning signals to the rest of the alien forces. 3 kills. Flawless. The aliens remained unaware of what had just happened. Down below, confusion began to ripple through the ranks. The remaining alien officers hesitated, looking around, unsure of what had occurred. To them, it seemed as though their colleagues had simply dropped dead without any cause. They glanced at their scanners, expecting alarms or readings of an attack, but nothing showed. Their technology, designed to detect massive threats, was blind to the precise strikes delivered from miles away. In the command center, the atmosphere was still one of smugness. The generals hadn't even noticed the casualties yet. Their focus remained on the broader battlefield, issuing orders to wipe out pockets of human resistance in other regions. But as more reports filtered in, alien officers failing to respond, communications going dead, the irritation began to build. "What is happening with the ground forces in Sector Alpha?" one of the generals barked, her voice clipped with annoyance. "Unclear," an aide replied, scanning through the data. "We're experiencing sudden losses in key personnel, but no visible enemy activity. It doesn't make sense." "They're human," the general scoffed. "They're always hiding in the shadows, relying on guerrilla tactics. Find them and destroy them. This is an inconvenience at best." But the shots kept coming. One by one, alien leaders in key positions fell, and with each strike, the chaos deepened. The snipers moved methodically, switching targets as they disrupted key nodes in the alien hierarchy. Their kills weren't random. Every shot was carefully calculated to dismantle the enemy's ability to command, to communicate, to control the battlefield. Ramirez tapped his earpiece. "Davis, I've got movement on the east flank. Looks like they're starting to suspect something." "Copy that," Davis responded. "Stay low. Keep picking them off." The aliens, though confused, were beginning to react. Patrols were sent out, scanning the area where the bodies had fallen. Scanners hummed, troops spread out, but they were looking for something larger, a force, a ship, or a group of insurgents. They weren't prepared for the meticulous work of a handful of humans striking from so far away. When another officer was taken down, this time mid-command, panic set in among the aliens on the ground. They had no way of knowing where the shots were coming from, and their advanced detection systems offered no help. Their soldiers scrambled, barking commands in their alien tongue, but their responses were disorganized, hampered by the loss of their key leaders. The snipers took advantage of the growing disarray. Davis moved to a new position, taking out a field commander attempting to regroup his scattered troops. Jackson eliminated a security officer who had started scanning the perimeter for hidden attackers. Each shot increased the confusion, each kill further fracturing the alien response. Back in the command center, frustration was mounting. The generals were no longer dismissing the situation as a minor disturbance. They had assumed their technology made them invulnerable to such pinpoint attacks, but it was now clear that something was picking off their forces with deadly efficiency. "This is unacceptable," one of the generals roared, slamming his fist on the control panel. "How are we losing personnel to an enemy we cannot even detect? Where are the scans? Where is the threat?" We don't know," another aide stammered. "Our technology isn't picking up anything significant. There are no heat signatures, no energy readings. It's a human trick," another general growled, pacing. "They're using primitive weapons, and they're exploiting our blind spots. Adjust the scanners. Find them." But the generals were beginning to realize the severity of the situation. The snipers weren't just picking off low-level soldiers, they were systematically dismantling their command structure on the ground. Every officer taken out was a blow to their ability to organize their forces. What they had initially dismissed as a minor inconvenience was now threatening their operations. "This is more than just some isolated attack," the blue-skinned general from earlier said, her tone more serious now. "These humans, they're calculating. They're hitting us where it hurts, and we didn't even see it coming." Despite the alien response, the snipers maintained their advantage. They moved as shadows, shifting positions after every few shots, staying ahead of the alien patrols that were now frantically combing the area. Their training had prepared them for this, remaining undetected, adapting to new threats, and exploiting their enemies' weaknesses. The strategic impact of their actions was already being felt across the battlefield. Without clear leadership, the alien ground forces were faltering. Communication breakdowns meant that key reinforcements were delayed or redirected to the wrong locations. Confusion spread through the ranks like wildfire, and Earth's remaining resistance forces were quick to capitalize on the disorder. Attacks that had once seemed doomed to failure now found success, as the alien forces struggled to coordinate under the relentless sniper fire. Back at the ridge, Davis adjusted his scope once more, scanning the alien command post. His team had done more damage than they could have hoped for in such a short time, and they weren't done yet. He spotted another high-ranking officer moving between two armored vehicles, clearly trying to restore some semblance of control. "Target acquired," Davis whispered. The shot was clean, a perfect line through a gap in the alien's defenses. He fired. Another officer down. Back in the alien command center, the air was thick with tension. The generals, once so confident, were now in damage control mode. Their operations were faltering, and for the first time since the invasion had begun, they realized they were being outmaneuvered by an enemy they had underestimated. This cannot continue," one general muttered, his confidence eroded. "We need to contain this threat now, or we risk losing the entire sector." But the snipers weren't finished. They were just getting started. The night was cold and still, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves as the snipers repositioned themselves. They had taken out officers and created enough chaos to put the alien forces on edge, but the mission wasn't over. The real targets, the elite guards protecting the alien generals, were their next focus. This was the moment everything would come to a head. Davis crouched behind a rock formation, watching through his scope as a group of alien soldiers, heavily armored and clearly elite, moved into position. These were not the rank-and-file troops that had panicked at the sight of their officers dropping dead. These were the general's best, a unit trained for precision, detection, and close combat. They had been sent to deal with the sniper threat. "Jackson, you see them?" Davis murmured into his comm. "Got them. 6 in total, moving west. They're scanning. High alert." Davis observed their movements carefully. These soldiers were different, disciplined, focused, and far more cautious than the ones they had dealt with before. The alien generals had finally realized the gravity of the situation. This unit was designed to neutralize threats like the snipers, and they had the tech to match. Advanced sensor suits and enhanced armor would make them harder to kill, and the snipers knew it. But Davis didn't waver. "Ramirez, you ready?" "Always," came the calm reply. The plan was simple but required perfect execution. The snipers spread out, surrounding the alien unit from 3 sides, staying low and hidden in the environment. These enemies would be harder to take down, and any mistake could reveal their position. The first shot came from Jackson. A clean hit to the lead soldier's head, but instead of dropping, the alien's armor absorbed the impact. Jackson cursed under his breath. The alien turned sharply, scanning the area, its sensors immediately picking up the slight heat signature from Jackson's location. They were compromised. The unit moved fast, splitting into 2 teams, one closing in on Jackson's position, the other sweeping for Ramirez and Davis. The air grew tense, every second thick with the possibility of a firefight breaking out at any moment. Davis quickly recalibrated his rifle, targeting a weak spot in the enemy's armor, the joint at the neck. He squeezed the trigger. This time, the alien soldier went down, collapsing in a heap. Ramirez followed suit, picking off another as it tried to flank Jackson. But now, the aliens were returning fire, beams of energy cutting through the forest. Jackson barely managed to move, narrowly avoiding a blast that melted the rock he had been using for cover. Despite the chaos, the snipers remained calm. They shifted positions, maintaining distance, refusing to engage head-on. Davis took out another soldier, aiming for the same weak spot, while Ramirez methodically eliminated a third. Their precision was unmatched, each shot delivered with clinical accuracy. But the aliens weren't backing down. The last two soldiers moved with frightening speed, closing the distance between them and the snipers. Davis had to make a split-second decision. He fired a shot that grazed one of the advancing soldiers, slowing it just enough for Jackson to finish the job. Ramirez was already repositioning, taking the final soldier down with a perfectly timed shot. The confrontation ended as quickly as it had begun, the elite alien unit neutralized. But the cost of that engagement was high. They had been forced to reveal their positions, and they knew the aliens would be recalibrating their tactics in real time. In the alien command center, the situation was unraveling. Reports of elite soldiers being killed by unseen snipers were flooding in, and the tension among the generals had reached a breaking point. "These humans are more dangerous than we thought," one of the generals snarled, his fingers tapping erratically on the controls. "They're not just a minor resistance, they're dismantling our forces. They've taken out several of our best men," another general added, her voice trembling with frustration. "We're losing control of the battlefield. Deploy more troops. Use the drones," the blue-skinned general snapped. "Find them and eliminate them, or this entire operation could collapse." But even as they issued orders, the snipers continued their work. The elite guards had been dispatched, and now there was nothing stopping Davis and his team from moving closer to the heart of the alien command post. Every kill they made further destabilized the alien ranks. The troops on the ground, once unified in their approach, were now disorganized and leaderless. Entire sections of the battlefield were in disarray, and Earth's resistance forces were taking advantage, launching counterattacks that were beginning to turn the tide. Davis and his team moved with precision, taking out key officers whenever they saw an opening. They didn't hesitate, even as the aliens grew more frantic. Patrols were now everywhere, drones sweeping the area, scanning for any sign of human presence. But the snipers stayed ahead of them, always one step ahead, using the terrain and their training to avoid detection. Back at the command center, the alien generals were in full panic mode. What had begun as an easy invasion was spiraling out of control. The snipers had not only decimated their elite forces but had also crippled their ability to organize and respond effectively. The balance of power was shifting. "We can't continue like this," one of the generals said, his voice filled with dread. "If we don't stop them now, we'll lose the entire operation." The blue-skinned general clenched her fists, glaring at the holographic map that displayed the crumbling battlefront. "We underestimated them," she admitted, her voice low. "These humans, they are not as primitive as we believed." The generals scrambled to adapt, throwing more resources into the fight, but it was too late. The snipers had created chaos that could not be easily undone. Every attempt to root them out failed, and every second that passed brought the aliens closer to defeat. The snipers' persistence was relentless, their mission clear. Davis crouched behind cover, watching as the alien forces below scrambled to respond to the ever-growing disarray. His hands were steady, his focus unwavering. This was what they had trained for, facing impossible odds and turning the tide when all hope seemed lost. "We've broken them," Jackson said quietly, observing the frantic movements of the alien troops through his scope. "Not yet," Davis replied. "But we're close." The snipers pressed on, their actions now having a profound effect on the battlefield. Earth's forces, inspired by the disruption, began to push back harder. With the alien command structure in disarray, their once coordinated attacks were falling apart. Every move the snipers made shifted the balance of power further in Earth's favor. In the alien command center, the generals were faced with the harsh reality that their technological superiority was no longer enough. The snipers, with their sheer determination and precision, had exposed the vulnerabilities in their strategy. "This isn't just a battle anymore," the blue-skinned general muttered, staring at the map with grim resolve. "This is survival." Davis took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The snipers had done more than they could have imagined. They had crippled an invasion that had seemed inevitable. But there was still more to do, and they wouldn't stop until it was finished. The battle had reached a breaking point. Alien forces were in chaos, but the snipers knew they had one more task: to strike at the heart of the command structure itself. Every shot they had taken so far had led to this moment. They had whittled away the alien forces, dismantled their elite units, and now the generals were within range. If they could neutralize the leadership, the invasion would crumble. Davis adjusted his scope, his heart steady as he spotted the alien command ship in the distance. Through the windows, the movement of high-ranking officers and commanders was visible. The generals had been forced to move closer to the battlefront in an attempt to regain control. They were now exposed, and the snipers weren't going to waste the opportunity. "We're going for the top now," Davis said, his voice low but firm in his calm. Ramirez and Jackson gave their acknowledgments. They had already mapped out their plan. Each of them had a target, a general who, once eliminated, would send the entire alien command into a tailspin. The risk was high. The alien command post was well guarded, with anti-sniper technology and drones patrolling the perimeter. But Davis knew that hesitation now would cost them everything. "On my mark," Davis muttered, lining up his shot. In that moment, everything moved with precision. Jackson's target, a senior general coordinating troop movements, was first. The bullet sliced through the air and into the alien's skull before anyone knew what had happened. Jackson immediately shifted position, avoiding detection. At almost the same time, Ramirez took out another general who was directing reinforcements on the ground. The alien collapsed mid-command, and chaos erupted as troops began looking around frantically, unsure of what had hit them. Davis exhaled, his own sights locked on the blue-skinned general, the one who had been leading the invasion from the beginning. She was barking orders into a communicator, clearly unaware of the devastation happening around her. His finger pressed the trigger. The shot was perfect. The bullet shattered the window of the command center and struck her directly in the chest. Her body jolted back, slumping over her control panel. There was a beat of silence, a pause where the world seemed to stop, and then the entire command center exploded into disarray. Inside the ship, officers scrambled, shouting in panic as their leadership fell apart. The loss of the generals was catastrophic. There was no one left to issue orders, no one left to coordinate the alien defense. Communication systems blinked out, and the once organized battlefront descended into pure chaos. Alien forces began retreating, disoriented and leaderless. "We've got them," Ramirez whispered, watching the scene unfold through his scope. The impact of the snipers' actions rippled across the battlefield. Without their commanders, the alien troops faltered, and what had been a carefully orchestrated invasion now turned into a rout. Earth's forces, sensing the shift, pressed forward with renewed vigor. Alien soldiers, once unbreakable in their resolve, were now fleeing or being overwhelmed by human counterattacks. Resistance fighters pushed through formerly impenetrable defenses, striking at alien positions that were no longer coordinated. In the command center, the few surviving alien officers struggled to regain control. Alarms blared, lights flashed, and the chaotic stream of reports showed the full extent of the damage. "They're in retreat! Sector 5 is falling! We're losing ground!" Panicked voices echoed throughout the chamber. "We need to regroup!" one officer shouted, his face pale as he stared at the devastation unfolding on the battlefield screens. "Activate the emergency defenses! We can still salvage this!" But it was too late. The snipers had shattered their command structure beyond repair. Each attempt by the remaining officers to reorganize was met with further losses as Earth's forces closed in. The once feared alien empire was now in a state of desperation. In a last-ditch effort, the aliens deployed a series of drones and automated defense systems, hoping to regain control of the situation. Swarms of drones spread out over the battlefield, searching for the snipers, hunting for the invisible force that had torn through their ranks. Anti-personnel turrets activated, and energy barriers were erected in key locations, blocking off strategic points. The alien generals, before their deaths, had banked on their superior technology to overwhelm human forces. But they had never counted on the precision and persistence of Earth's snipers. Even as the drones circled overhead, Davis and his team remained elusive. They moved as shadows, evading the drones with practiced skill, using the terrain to their advantage. Jackson darted behind a ridge, narrowly avoiding a drone scan, while Ramirez crawled through the underbrush, his rifle strapped to his back, waiting for the right moment to strike. Davis, ever methodical, led them deeper into the alien lines, where they could continue dismantling the remnants of the alien defense. "This isn't over yet," Davis whispered into his comm, his eyes scanning the horizon. "They'll throw everything they've got at us now." He was right. The aliens, realizing they were losing control, launched a counteroffensive. Waves of ground troops, bolstered by heavy artillery, stormed the snipers' position. Energy blasts lit up the night, the sounds of explosions echoing through the hills as the alien forces converged. But Davis and his team didn't falter. They had prepared for this moment, for the inevitability that the aliens would strike back with everything they had. With every shot, they thinned the alien ranks, their actions so precise that it seemed as if they were operating on a different battlefield altogether. The snipers took out key artillery units, disrupted communications, and targeted commanders as they tried to regain control of the alien forces. The desperation of the alien generals was palpable. They had never expected to face such relentless resistance, never imagined that humans could turn the tide against their overwhelming technological superiority. Their final gambits, waves of reinforcements and overwhelming firepower, only served to highlight their growing sense of panic. Nothing was working. The more they tried to regain control, the more they lost it. Earth's forces, emboldened by the sniper's success, surged forward. The alien troops, once seen as invincible, were now retreating en masse. Their defensive lines were collapsing, and their advanced weaponry was falling into disrepair as engineers were picked off one by one. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had turned into an outright victory for the resistance. The snipers didn't stop. Even as the alien forces crumbled, they pushed deeper into enemy territory, ensuring that there would be no recovery, no last-minute rally. Every key outpost, every commander that remained, was eliminated with surgical precision. The battlefield had shifted entirely in Earth's favor. Back in the alien command center, the remaining officers were in full retreat. The holographic map, once filled with coordinated movements of their troops, now showed entire sections blinking out as the snipers methodically dismantled their defenses. "It's over," one of the officers muttered, defeat heavy in his voice. The realization spread through the ranks. The alien empire, once so confident in its conquest of Earth, had been brought to its knees by a handful of human snipers who had refused to back down. The balance of power had shifted irreversibly. Davis watched through his scope as the last of the alien troops began to fall back, retreating into the hills. The battle was won. But even in victory, he didn't lower his rifle. There were still threats out there, still pockets of resistance that needed to be cleaned up. But for now, they had done the impossible. They had turned the tide of an invasion that had once seemed unstoppable. Earth's forces were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. "Good work, everyone," Davis said quietly, lowering his rifle at last. The snipers had done their job. They had saved the world. The battlefield was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned just hours earlier. Smoke still billowed from the remnants of alien machinery, and the twisted wreckage of their once imposing ships littered the horizon. The alien generals, those who had once commanded an entire armada with arrogance and certainty, were now either dead or captured. Their defeat was total, their invasion plan in ruins. Inside the alien command center, what remained of their leadership huddled in silence. The blue-skinned general, despite her grievous wound, was still alive, her eyes narrowed in disbelief as she stared at the reports streaming in. Entire divisions gone, elite units wiped out, and now, her forces were in full retreat. She had witnessed the collapse firsthand. The human snipers, those primitive warriors she had so easily dismissed, had decimated her army with nothing more than patience, precision, and sheer determination. She exhaled slowly, the pain in her chest sharp but not nearly as unbearable as the humiliation. "I never thought," she began, her voice hoarse, "that humans would pose such a threat." An officer, battered and defeated, stood nearby. "They fought with skill we couldn't predict, General. We underestimated them." The blue-skinned general nodded, closing her eyes for a moment. "Tell the survivors to retreat. There is nothing more we can do here." As the alien fleet began to withdraw, a quiet respect for the human snipers hung in the air. The generals had once seen them as insignificant compared to their vast technological superiority, but they now understood the truth. Human resilience, adaptability, and the will to fight against impossible odds had broken them. On Earth, the victory was met with stunned silence at first, disbelief quickly giving way to celebration. The snipers, still deep within enemy territory, moved carefully back toward their base, each step heavy with the weight of what they had achieved. They had gone in knowing that the odds were against them. Now, as they walked through the aftermath of their actions, they saw the result of their precision: alien machines abandoned, weapons discarded, and troops who had once been feared now scattered and defeated. Ramirez paused on a ridge, taking in the scene below. "I never thought I'd live to see this," he muttered, wiping the sweat from his brow. Jackson chuckled, a rare sound after so much tension. "We did what they said was impossible." Davis, always the calm leader, remained quiet as he observed the alien forces pulling back. Victory was theirs, but the cost had been high. He knew that many wouldn't understand the sacrifices they had made, the constant danger, the split-second decisions that had turned the tide. But as they reached their extraction point, a sense of accomplishment settled over them. The transport that would take them back to base arrived, and as the snipers boarded, Davis finally allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. Against overwhelming odds, they had helped save their world. Back at Earth's main resistance base, the mood was electric. Cheers echoed through the halls as news of the victory spread. Civilians and soldiers alike, who had lived in fear of annihilation, were now embracing each other, celebrating the snipers as heroes. The reports were clear: Earth's defenses had been on the brink of collapse, but the actions of a few snipers had turned the entire war. As the team disembarked from their transport, they were met with applause. High-ranking officers and civilians alike gathered to greet them. General Thompson, head of Earth's resistance forces, stepped forward, his face beaming with pride. "You did it," he said, shaking Davis's hand firmly. "I don't think any of us can truly understand what you've done out there, but we owe you everything." Davis nodded, accepting the praise with humility. "We just did our job, sir." Thompson gestured toward the crowd behind him. "Your job saved this planet. You took out their leadership. The entire invasion force is in disarray. They're retreating. We've already begun pushing them out of several key territories." Jackson, grinning wide, nudged Ramirez. "Not bad for a bunch of snipers, huh?" The recognition didn't stop there. As word of their mission spread, Earth's media picked up the story, turning the snipers into symbols of resilience and defiance. Everywhere they went, their names were spoken with respect. Davis and his team were interviewed, their exploits analyzed in detail. But through it all, the snipers remained grounded. They knew that the battle hadn't been won by any single person, but by the careful coordination, skill, and trust they had placed in each other. In the days following the battle, Earth's forces began to rebuild. Alien technology was salvaged, studied, and repurposed to strengthen the planet's defenses. The lessons learned from the snipers' mission became central to Earth's strategy moving forward: precision over brute force, adaptability over rigid tactics. The aliens had learned that lesson too, but far too late. In their retreat, the alien forces left behind an undeniable truth: humanity had been underestimated. What the alien generals had seen as a simple conquest had turned into a nightmare, and it was all due to the humans' ability to fight back with ingenuity and grit. The snipers had shown that advanced technology wasn't invincible, that sometimes, the most dangerous enemy was the one you couldn't see until it was too late. Reflecting on the conflict, Earth's leaders realized that this victory was about more than just survival. It was a testament to humanity's enduring spirit, the ability to face extinction and refuse to go quietly. The snipers had embodied that spirit, quiet, determined, relentless in their pursuit of protecting their world. For the alien generals, the defeat would haunt them. They had once viewed Earth as a mere stepping stone in their campaign of conquest, but the humans had proved them wrong at every turn. The snipers, in particular, had left a mark on their psyche, faceless killers who had picked apart their plans with terrifying efficiency. There was no arrogance left in the alien leadership now, only grudging respect for the species they had so deeply misunderstood. Back on Earth, the snipers' victory was marked with a quiet ceremony. No grand parades, no loud celebrations, just a moment of reflection for those who had fallen and those who had fought so hard. Davis stood with his team, looking out over the rebuilt base. The scars of battle were still visible, but so was the resilience that had carried them through. General Thompson approached once more, placing a hand on Davis's shoulder. "You've given us a chance to fight back. This isn't over, but because of you, we know we can win." Davis nodded, his mind already focused on what came next. The snipers had done the impossible, but there was always another battle, another mission to plan. For now, though, they would take this moment, this hard-fought victory, and carry it with them into whatever lay ahead. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the war-torn landscape, Davis and his team knew that they had changed the course of history. They had defied the odds, faced an enemy far more powerful than themselves, and won. The snipers walked away, quiet as ever, their work done, for now. But their legacy, the impact of their actions, would be felt for generations. They had shown the world that even in the darkest of times, a handful of determined individuals could make all the difference. Earth had been saved, and the snipers had earned their place as the heroes of a war that could have ended in extinction. They didn't need the praise. They didn't need the recognition. All they needed was the knowledge that, when it mattered most, they had stood their ground and fought for their world. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. I promise you, nothing will happen to your finger.